What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another look at what's going on in pop culture this week. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by a man who thinks that everybody is a sexy baby and he's the monster on the hill, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
I don't even remember what that's a reference to, but I'm
Taylor
sure I heard it
Swift, dog.
recently.
Come on. Midnight's is here. 3 a.m. is here. You kidding me?
No, I didn't recognize that one, to be
From
honest. But
Nancy Drew.
very exciting record for sure. Taylor Swift, just when the world needed her most, she's back.
Yes, the world needed to heal, and Taylor's bringing the healing with a return to, I guess, like kind of form. We'll be talking about it. We also have a couple other albums as well as some movies and a big television show to talk about today. So hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. But Dave, for those who are watching on YouTube, they'll see that Taylor Swift is not behind us right now. We're talking Carly Rae Jepsen, another huge pop drop this past weekend, and boy, uh, we haven't talked about Carly Rae in a couple of years. And last time we did, I think we really enjoyed what we got for the most part. I think one of the when you think about that era of like late 2000s female young pop stars, in my mind, there's three that I kind of lump together. It's like Charlie XCX, Carly Rae Jepsen, and Rebecca Black for some reason. I think because they all kind of felt like they came up with these songs that like people didn't actually expect them to like
Huh.
sustain success. Rebecca Black obviously did not, although she's having a great TikTok revival.
Yeah.
But Carly Rae and Charlie XCX both have over the last decade into this new decade really come into form and found this groove for themselves where they are just fully formed artists. And I think that continues on the loneliest time because while I think there's some parts of this record that I found a bit redundant, maybe not her best work, there's some moments I felt were pretty inspired. I really enjoyed. How did you feel about this new record?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. Tough luck for Carly Rae dropping same day as Taylor. She had the date first, alas, when you're
She
as
didn't
big
back
as
down.
when you're as big as Taylor, you don't really pay attention to other people's dates, obviously. Nonetheless, though, I'd have to imagine Loneliest Time will be pleasing to Carly Rae's loyal fan base. She's not the biggest pop star in the world, but she is quite successful and quite popular in her own regard. And like you said, it's kind of been a long time coming. And I think going into this, I don't know if I had like strong expectations because truthfully, I didn't really care for that first lead single back in May, Western Wind. Bit too folky for me. I'm like, that's just not like what I associate with Carly Rae, even if like the writing might be there, just like the sounds not what I'm thinking of. But like if we're being honest, she's been on the 80s wave
Oh
longer
yeah.
than most in terms of pop music these days. So it's kind of cool to hear new music from her as other people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon, as we discuss ad nauseum whenever new music comes out. And she's also kind of proven that she's a bit out of the ordinary in pop because the last two albums have featured these very distinct like side B companion albums with both Emotion and Dedicated getting a side B after the original release. And now I'm like, does Loneliest Time necessarily need a side B? I don't think so. I think this was
Mm-mm.
pretty good on its own and just had a lot of, I think, really enjoyable songs. I think Carly Rae has really found herself as a writer and a performer and just really kind of glides on a lot of this production that she's been riding for some time. It probably doesn't reinvent the wheel for Carly Rae Jepsen fans, but in terms of like not the most popular pop artist, that alt pop scene, like I think she's obviously continuing to prove herself, and this was a success.
Yeah, this was definitely a success. You mentioned that like 80s sound and how Western Wind, the first single of this, really is a departure. But I think for that reason, I actually really enjoyed Western Wind. I don't think when she tries different things on this, she necessarily uh, is very successful. A song to me like Beach House is a song that I just found to be like uh good try good effort but not totally my jam. But there's songs like like Talking to Yourself, right?
Mm.
Or like you go a little bit further and you get like Bad Thing Twice, and she can just like churn out these like bubblegum 80s pop hits like so easily, and it just kind of feels like she has that formula down. And so seeing when she branched out on this, my ears perked out up a little bit more. And so you mentioned Western Wind, which kind of takes like I- my first thought when that song started was the Freedom 99 drums from uh George Michael. And then you kind of bring in like a more like toned back, almost like Toto feel at times. Like it's an interesting song, but I really do enjoy it. And then another track like that stood out was Go Find Yourself or whatever, like a pure emotional ballad. And I think she just like crushes that. I think her vocal performance on that is great. But then if you just want to like go and get your Carly Rae fix, there's plenty of just 80s pop songs on here. Like her and Puth could be turning this shit out like nothing, man. Like seriously, just give us an album of the year of this. It's great. What did you like about it?
Yeah, I think that's all right. I thought Talking to Yourself in particular, like the drums and that's awesome. That's just a banger from
Yeah.
Carly Rae. Great song. I like Joshua Tree a lot. Shout out the bass line there, nice guitar riffs, just really kind of fits the vibe she often goes for. And in the song before that, the first song, Surrender My Heart,
Yeah.
I really enjoy the chorus on that song, and the way really the song builds up to that chorus really kind of pumps you up. I thought the Beach House chorus was actually pretty fun, but I have seen a lot of people have been deriding it, which I get. But yeah, I think just generally like when she's on like the more upbeat side of things, she's just really really solid all the time.
Yeah.
And once in a while, there's like true like masterpiece. Like I think of some of her past singles, like Cut to the Feeling, for example. Like she's like obviously very talented and uh, really cool to see someone who obviously found massive success 10 years ago with the best-selling song of 2012, Call Me Maybe, everybody knows, but then didn't find that immediate like mainstream success in the immediate wake of Call Me Maybe, in the immediate wake of that like busting on the scene moment.
Hmm.
To see how far she's come and the kind of loyal cult like fan base that she has not only developed but sustained for several years at this point, just really cool. Hats off to her.
Yeah, completely. I love seeing her success. She's really fun. I think artist just to follow. And if you wrote her off after Call Me Maybe, you have a lot to dive into and really enjoy now. So really highly suggest it. And I suggest The Loneliest Time as a listen for those that are tuning in. But we're not going to get to Taylor quite yet because there was another big album drop, the Arctic Monkeys. When we talk about rock acts, they are one of the premier rock acts that is probably going to be headlining a lot this coming year. They have a world tour set, or I should say a European and a North American tour, not a world tour quite yet. But it's interesting because last time we talked about them was 4 years ago, and they released Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. A bit of a departure from what we typically know about the Arctic
A bit.
Monkeys, going from being this rock, punk rock type sound into a more uh, jazz lounge band.
Yeah. Lounge singer.
And it was, I think, very mixed reception for Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. I did see them live after that, and they still fucking crush it. They're fantastic live, but you can tell that the people there are all waiting for them to, bust out the guitars and really tear the place down. And when they go into the more like jazzy lounge sound, it's not as well received, or people aren't really there for that. So then we're getting the car 4 years later, and we're still doing the lounge thing, Dave. But so did the car work for you this time, or was it just kind of like go back to whirring the guitars around, boys?
Yeah, I really do respect that Alex Turner and the guys are just down to pick up where they left off. They don't give a flying fuck about what people said last time. This is what they're feeling these days. I respect the shit out of that because it's in the face of Arctic Monkeys right now doing almost 38 million monthly listeners on Spotify, because AM is one of the biggest and most enduring rock albums of the last 10 years.
Yep.
And Do I Want to Know, almost 1.5 billion streams, a massive track, probably like the signature rock song of that same time period, or at least, right up there.
Yeah.
And they're just not interested in that anymore. And of course, they had made many albums to this point. This is the seventh, so 5 albums of one thing, 2 albums of this new thing. Like I said, I respect it. Is this what I would like to hear? No. Honestly, I like the older stuff better. That's just in line with what I'm into. But this is like pretty like impressively made music in terms of the sounds and the layers of instruments and the approach to making all these songs. It's just not my favorite thing is all, which is kind of in line with what some people said about the last time around. So in a sense, not a lot has changed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complete like Alex Turner vehicle. It's like it's almost hard to like call it a Monkeys record, but I guess as Turner goes, so go the Arctic Monkeys at this point. Um,
To that point, he actually like recorded and like developed most of this music by himself, and then brought the band in to do the real
fill it out.
recordings, and yeah, audible from there. But so yeah, very much his creation.
Yeah, and it's they have a couple of collaborators, particularly James Ford is someone that they've worked with a lot. He's all over the production on this, which makes a lot of sense. Um, I gotta say, I liked this more than Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Like you said, I think this is like a gorgeous album, and just in terms of like how it sounds. I think it's the sort of thing where if this was a different band, I would probably look at it and be like, man, this is really, really solid and like amazing. But you just know that they could still turn out just a great rock album if they wanted to. But like you said, Turner's just not interested in that right now. And so we get this loungy album, but there's a lot of strings in this one. There's a lot more lush production. It's a little funkier at times, and I dug this a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I think there's some moments that are very like hit or miss, and to be honest, a lot of the lyrics I don't get at all. Like a lot of it is just like it sounds like mumbo jumbo nonsense at times, and it's hard to follow. But you just have Alex Turner with these like these falsetto to like crooning the whole time, and then these like beautifully arranged string sections. You have a couple of great guitar solos. You have some really funky like guitar riffs and bass lines, and it's like there's so much here to like. The more I've listened to it, the more I've enjoyed it. But like you said, almost 10 years ago we got AM, and it's like, man, they could just put out one of these rock albums that people will just love, and I hope they go back to it at some point, because I do miss hearing those Monkeys. But with that said, I mean, what were the songs that you found yourself enjoying the most?
Yeah, there were 2 songs that stood out to me the most. One would be the first song, "There'd Better Be a Mirror Ball."
The first single.
Just yeah, the piano on that, especially the way
Mhm.
it like hits in like succession towards the beginning, very much reminded me of like a movie drop or something, like
Mm.
a needle drop in a film. Thought that was really cool. And then the other one I really dug was "Hello You." Just the
Ooh.
bass, the keys, the strings as well. Like it just some of the best musical playing to me on the listen. But yeah, I think it's all really pleasant and all sounds really great. So I think you just have to be in the right headspace to listen to Alex Turner just do the lounge singer thing again.
Yeah. I will say he can pull the lounge singer thing off. He's like one of those frontmen that is like a true frontman when you go see him, and like women around you are like losing their fucking minds. Um, but yeah, what I really like about Hello You is the bass line, like you said, but matched with the bongos like the whole time. It just like has this really like 70s feel to it, which is great. And yeah, there'd be a mirror ball. I think it's probably the most beautifully written song that they have on here. Just like the as a whole, the song really works for me. But man, I like the next song. I ain't quite where I think I am. The second one, that guitar riff, wow 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 wow, like the wah wah on it just is so funky. I really love that, and it's such a change up from the first song. It really like kind of pulled me out of this like trance that Mirrorball kind of puts you in. a few songs later, jet skis on the moat is so ridiculous. Even just thinking about the song. But he's kind of getting into his Isaac Hayes here, right? Even in like delivery and like tune, it's very like that period. And that's followed up by Body Paint, which I think is probably my favorite song here. He has that line, if you're thinking of me, I'm thinking of you too. Like that's kind of like the epitome of the song, just kind of setting that whole moment up, but it's really well done. I think that one also has like my favorite like build up to the end. Like the end, like the guitar's just really like whirring and get more of like a classic feel to it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a song on this record that I like don't like, but there's a few on the back half that I found a bit less engaging. Mr. Schwartz was one I didn't really dig that much. And Big Ideas, I didn't find myself going back to all too much, but also a beautiful string arrangement for that. There's still a lot to like here, and like you said, you got to respect them at least committing to the bit, if nothing else. So I'd say check this out, but I mean, not very commercial. Like this is not something like someone clicking through Spotify is gonna like click on. Like the average person is gonna be like, "Oh man, check out this album," you know?
Yeah, one of my first thoughts was not that the music is actually that similar, but just kind of the approach to the musical playing and the lack of commercial viability. It reminded me a lot of the Father John Misty album we got earlier this year, Chloe in the
Oh
Next
yeah.
20th Century. It's like, oh yeah, you just did one for you with that.
Although
More power to you.
I will say, in the UK, it's battling for number one with Midnight's on the
Yep,
charts. So
100,000 plus in the UK. Very impressive, for sure.
Arctic
Obviously,
Monkeys.
Midnight's much bigger in the US, but yeah, Arctic Monkeys. It shouldn't come as a shock that they have built-in like real fan base that's still going to show up for something that's not as broadly popular as all the AM hits that have now, you know, sustained themselves on streaming.
Definitely. Well, we're gonna put a song from there onto our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify, so check that out. And we'll also have a Taylor Swift song from Midnight's because Taylor Swift is back. Finally. We needed her, you know. We haven't gotten enough Taylor Swift in the last couple of years, have we, Dave?
You know, I'm just happy she's not doing any re-recordings of music she already made. How nice to get new Taylor Swift music. It's a much more creatively fulfilling thing to consume to me than hearing the Taylor's versions. Now, the record sales for the Taylor's versions and the All Too Well Redux would disagree, but that's just for me. I think this is a better use of her talents. The 10th Taylor Swift album, Midnight's.
And Midnight's we've known is coming for quite a bit. Taylor announced this, I think it was about 2 months ago now, back in August, I think.
Yep. You know what this
Announced it.
means? The traditional album rollout is back and here to stay. Both Beyonce and Taylor Swift, two of the most famous purveyors of the surprise album drop, both did traditional album rollouts this year to great success. Taylor Swift, of course, per hits daily double on track, 1.4 to 1.6 million first week sales, which is going to be around the fifth best-selling album week of all time in the United States, and of course the first by a wide margin to do this in the streaming era. Talk about a crazy success. But Taylor like really built this up, hyped this up to her fans, and just broadly to the world for an extended period of time. As you said, this is a huge departure from the last time around with folklore, especially, and also Evermore, which came with very limited notice and few, if any, singles. So it's Taylor really going back to the well in terms of the pop machine, and also sonically back more towards what we'd associate pre-2020 from her. And obviously it's very exciting, and it's definitely working because this album is all over the place right now.
It's all over the place. Did you find yourself enjoying this album as much as you expected to? Because I think when I heard we were getting like a Taylor album with Jack at the helm, co-wrote all the songs with her.
Yeah. Somehow more Jack Antonoff with Taylor Swift than ever before. I did not know that was possible, but technically that is actually the case this time around with Midnight's.
And I I was kind of like, oh man, here we go. Back to like lover form here. Like this is gonna be a fucking bop. And I didn't find myself like loving everything we got here. I definitely think there's some really great moments, but I don't think the highs are as high as on some of her other original songs,
Mhm.
or I guess like pop songs. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I know. I think that's right. And if you listen to Midnight's, like most of the world has at this point, it is intentionally a bit pared back. Specifically, Taylor's vocals are reined in on
Hmm.
this one. And I couldn't help but just immediately go back to Delicate on Reputation, the very
Mm.
beginning of that song, where the vocoder effect's very famous. Of course, it's featured in the Miss Americana doc. I was really happy to see the Pitchfork review call out this song as well. That whole like sonic idea of the way Delicate starts from Reputation, I feel like her and Jack just applied that to all of these songs more or less. And I like that song. I think that song's pretty catchy, especially that moment.
Yeah.
And I get what they were doing here, but the Taylor vocals are are reined in. And I think sonically with this as a pop Taylor release, it doesn't really go anywhere she hasn't gone before, and really comes across as a companion piece to Lover. But I think Lover, which I liked a lot, we definitely really liked as a corrective to Reputation when it came
Oh
out in
yeah.
2019. Lover is just a bit more expansive and just has bigger, higher highs, whereas Midnight's, perhaps as the album title suggests, feels much more reined in and moody. And, I think maybe the Taylor heads, the Swifties, would really have to decide, like, is Taylor at her apex writing bag here? Because I think it's kind of interesting lyrically where she's bringing in the lover approach to the music again, leaving behind the folklore and evermore sonics. But lyrically, it reminds me a lot of Reputation at times, where she's kind of like
Yes.
interrogating the idea of Taylor Swift, the persona of Taylor Swift, that celebrity, that piece on the mantle that Taylor has propped up for her own career's sake, but also many of her fans have done as well. And it's kind of interesting to hear all these different influences from Taylor's past coming through on Midnights. But I don't know if there's like the bops per se for that
Yeah.
you expect from pop Taylor. There's definitely a lot of highlights, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a part of this where you like chalk it up to the concept of the album being these like songs that Taylor wrote when she couldn't sleep at midnight, which just I think intrinsically they'd be a little sleepier, a little quieter.
Mhm.
Um, but I definitely think it means that there's something missing a little bit, at least for me, in terms of the like energy that comes across. I completely agree with what you were talking about with Reputation. I think there's moments on this where I feel like she took the Evermore sessions and almost like applied some of that to Reputation and like had a baby with it. And it like worked in some really great ways because I think her pen is still really strong on this. I don't think anyone writes songs the way that she does, and that's just like why she's a singular talent for this generation. Um, but I think also at times it comes across as like, I don't know. Like I just found myself finding this a bit like a step back in a way, like something like vigilante shit. I just was like, what are we doing here? Like, what am I listening to right now? It's like Taylor Swift goes Batman. Like, what is
The
going on?
addendum to the Scooter Braun feud,
Yeah.
vigilante shit. There's some pretty good like strays, not really
There are.
strays, straight up bullets fired at Scooter,
Oh,
referencing things about him. I appreciate that. That's all in good fun, and she's of course very justified in
oh,
firing those
totally.
shots, as we know we've detailed before. Um, yeah, no, I think you're right. And that this is why I think her wasting a whole year of her career on re-recordings is so disappointing, because this is the 10th Taylor Swift album, Midnights. And
It's
you
crazy.
know what? It's still pretty good as far
Yeah.
as 10th albums go. But you know what would be cool? If that 10th album came out last year and we were getting the 11th album this year, like it's okay to have not everything be a 10 when you're this deep into your career. But
Mhm.
let's also not like waste our time with stuff that's not creatively fulfilling at all.
Mhm.
Like I'm just not invested in Taylor Swift like getting the maximum amount of money out of her music publishing. She's super successful. I don't give a shit about that. other artists, it matters more. But like, yeah, cool. Taylor Swift, you've owned like actually the last like 4 records now. Like we don't really care about that anymore. Let's get back to making real music again. And she did with this. And
Yeah.
like you said, it is kind of interesting that it's like a concept record, and it I can't help also but reflect on what is the Taylor Swift concert tour, stadium tour coming up, unannounced still, but coming up going to be. Let's not forget, she's never toured Lover. The Lover tour got canceled due to COVID, so she hasn't toured Lover or Midnights, which are the most stadium live friendly music she's made, and of course she hasn't toured Folklore Evermore, which were designed with that not in mind at all, of course, live performance. So I wonder like what that mix is going to be now. In terms, like, how does she view this music of hers? Because I think if you look at it in the macro view, as we've been saying, it does kind of feel like lesser material of a similar approach, but it's kind of like more modernized per all the things that have happened in her life to this point. Like there's still a lot going into it, but yeah, it's quite the interesting situation. And it's kind of funny that this, of all the Taylor records, this is the one that is her best selling yet. First week,
I mean, I think this speaks more to who Taylor Swift is as an artist in the public eye at this point. I mean, she announces a record, and her fans are literally like rabid on the internet. I mean, she dropped this announcement, and she dropped like the I don't know teaser to it on Thursday Night Football. Pretty sure it like broke Thursday Night Football like viewing records because of that, and it immediately goes onto the internet.
Happy
People
Amazon.
are pulling apart the teaser,
Yep.
and like looking for clues, building this lore around it. And it's like Taylor Swift has grown beyond just being an artist, but like there's this whole like other side where there's like hints and clues and connections that like Swifties are able to find that you just never do. And it's a credit to her for being this like brilliant artist that can tie all these things together and make these connections. But so much of it now is just manufactured because Swifties are fucking thirsty for this shit. It's great, but it's also like she's just it's not just Taylor as an artist. It's Taylor as like a character, and it's
Right.
pretty fascinating.
And that's why I do appreciate that she's kind of modernized or brought back up the Reputation lyrics, where the idea of Taylor, which as you said is so important in real life in terms of how her fans interact with her and her career, it's cool to hear that again in the music. We liked Folklore and Evermore for being like kind of a lyrical uh new road, like down this new cul-de-sac where Taylor's actually like writing not about herself really for the first time and kind of making more like conceptual records and like the Great American Dynasty. We never heard something like that before from Taylor Swift. Now she's brought it back to the good old days, the bread and butter of Taylor Swift, as you will. But that's really where she made her name, of course, and her legion of fans. So I guess it can't be too surprising. But yeah, I mean, despite all these some misgivings, I think there's still plenty of highlights, and there will be hits on this, even if these songs are not designed to be as big as some of her past hits.
I think this album is one of the most like self-loathing that you get from her, and that kind of starts with the single Anti-Hero, the third track on the album, which is the sexy baby line I was telling you about. I mean, the whole chorus to that is like so Taylor Swift, but obviously I think is going to be one of the most memorable songs from this. I'm the problem, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. Like
rooting for the anti-hero.
Yep, it must be. Was it so like? I don't even know what the line is. Must be so something rooting for the anti-hero. I was like, man, Taylor, like you're really going in on yourself here. And then she has the whole like fantasy about being killed by her daughter-in-law in the future, and very like I think it's a really well written song and a fun song, which is nice because I don't know how many of these songs I found to be like super fun in reading through. I mean, like I think the first 3 are all pretty good. You get to Snow on the Beach with Lana. I'm not like big on that one. I don't know. What was your temperature on that?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of a hyped up collab. Lana Del Rey, of course, in her own regard, fabled American songwriter of recent times, and yet I feel like that song almost would have fit better on one of the recent Lana albums, like
Hmm.
Chemtrails or Blue Banisters or something,
Yeah.
where it sounded. But uh, the way Lana kind of comes in at the end and Taylor's faded out in the song, it's all right, but I guess maybe better than I expected. But I think coming off that first three, Lavender Haze, Maroon, Antihero, I think that's a really strong start.
Yep.
And right off the bat with Lavender Haze, you have like just some like classic like Jack Antonoff ass touches, like that Damned If You Do like vocal tick from Taylor on Lavender Haze. This felt like classic Jack to me. And yeah, funny that they somehow found a way to be even more creatively entwined
Yeah.
on an album. I made the joke, but I really didn't think that she would want to go down that road even further, just for her own creative juices. But no, they really seem to just thrive together, it seems, or just love working together.
Yeah, and somehow Desner phased out of this. He's on a lot of the 3 a.m. edition tracks, but
Yep.
I was like surprised to not see him more involved in this. I guess he gets a couple more productions too, but I don't know. Interesting. Um, yeah. What other songs stood out to you, or did you find yourself enjoying?
Yeah, I really liked Question. I just thought the
Yeah.
lyrics from Taylor were really strong there. The vocal breakdown is really fun. With Vigilante shit, I did really enjoy the chorus. Um, Midnight Rain, I liked. I thought Bejeweled was pretty catchy. Um, there's myriad bonus tracks too, very reminiscent of early Taylor album releases. Some of those I think are a bit more up and down, but I thought Glitch was probably one of the more interesting ones because it sounds a bit like a sonic road she hasn't really gone down before. Like we said, most of Midnight's is familiar from the music making perspective for the most part. So it is cool that some of those bonus tracks maybe stand out a little bit as like, oh, we haven't really heard Taylor do something like this before. Uh, yeah, I think, like you said, Antihero is the big hit for sure, just in terms of like, it's not as big as her other big hits, but like, it has those trademark, like, lyrics that her fans have found relatable for 15 years.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that there's a couple of songs that really stood out to me. Mastermind, the last track, I thought was really strong. And maybe some of her best writing on this. I agree with you on Question, another one that stood out. Did you listen to the bonus tracks?
I listened to some of them on YouTube. There's actually quite a lot because there's like the 3M edition, and there's that
Yeah,
other, I think it's a Target only one
deluxe
again.
CD.
Yep, classic. From
Yeah,
her.
which is just 2 remixes and then one original. But yeah, the 3 a.m. one was the one that I listened to on Spotify, and actually one of my favorite songs out of all these. Actually, there's two of them, but would have, could have, should have. I thought was really strong bonus track. Um, really just enjoyed the like energy to that, which I wish I just made it onto the regular one because it's such a fun song. And then Infidelity, I thought was like a clever twist to High Fidelity. They kind of use that as like a
Mhm.
framing device, and I was like, oh, that's pretty clever. And of course, she writes really well around it, so it helps. But is she still with the guy from not Normal People? I can't remember it.
Kind
The
of
other,
conversations with friends own
yeah,
Joe Alwyn.
yeah.
Yes, she is. In fact, on Sweet Nothing, Joe Alwyn is a credited songwriter under his pseudonym, William Bowery.
Oh boy,
Shout out their love. It seems to be real.
seems to be for sure. Happy for them. Yeah, I mean, what are we supposed to make of Taylor Swift at this point? She's just like the biggest star in the world.
I mean, the data would support that at this
Yeah.
current time, or at least top three, top five. Depends where you are in the world, maybe, but sets the Spotify first day album record, 186 million, a healthy 30 million higher than Certified Lover Boy, the previous high mark.
Oh, thank you.
Christ, 400,000 vinyl records sold on the first day, which happens to double the previous single week record in one day. As we said, 1.4 to 1.6 million first week. You're looking at fifth or seventh best week ever, depending on where in that range it falls. 100,000 plus in the UK at the same time. I mean, going into this, she was like seventh in monthly listeners on Spotify with no original new music out in over almost 2 years. Like, yeah, she's really never been bigger. And you have to imagine when she finally goes on a Lover Midnight's Folklore More tour, it'll be the highest earner of the year, you'd have to imagine.
Crazy. I mean, she definitely deserves it. An artist that is, unrivaled at this point, and especially for our generation. But man, it's just insane how she went from being, little a country girl plucking her guitar, writing love songs, to uh, this persona, this larger than life person. It's amazing.
Totally. And also, you really, I think it's really instructive to reflect on how Reputation went at the time in 2017, where it was quite polarizing, quite maligned in some corners, and is getting a bit of a critical reevaluation in the time since. But the way she bounced back from that, and a lot of the feuds with the Kardashians and Kanye, of course, and Scooter and Scott Borchetta, like there's been so many things going on in that Taylor Swift orbit, and yet the music has remained definitely, I think, more engaging and interesting as she's gone down multiple roads since Reputation. And yeah, I mean, obviously 10 albums in, she's nowhere near the end of the road. So, I mean, but she's in her mid 30s. Like, there's no way to really project anything else on her except she wisely waited to release Midnights until the Grammy cycle had turned over, so she's not in that Beyonce Adele fight. She's in the following year, 2024 Grammys, where she will almost assuredly win Album of the Year.
Yeah, and she, you talked about all those feuds or controversies. She's always on the right side of it. Like she pretty much always wins. Pretty crazy. Uh, Happy for Taylor. Happy for us. Check out our Nowstalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify. Move on to Decision to Leave, a movie I was not able to make it to, but Dave putting in that work to bring you all the content you need and deserve. Dave, tell me about this movie. Was it good?
Yeah, so I like Decision to Leave. It was not what I expected, but very notable movie for several reasons. This is the new film from Park Chan-wook, his first film since The Handmaiden in 2016. Of course, since then, we saw him create and direct every episode of Little Drummer Girl, the BBC and AMC spy thriller Licari series with Florence Pugh, which we liked quite a bit back in 2018. So still, been a fair amount of time for Park Chan-wook, who's probably most well known for Old Boy, along with The Handmaiden. Just one of the signature South Korean filmmakers of the last 30 years. And new film from him, very exciting. This premiered at Cannes. He won Best Director there. This is officially the South Korean Best International Feature Film submission at the Oscars this year. I feel like a nomination at the very least is quite safe at this point. And yeah, it's I think it's a strong film that is quite challenging in a good way. It's a very engaging movie, but also very intelligent in how it, I think, asks a lot of the audience. And on its surface, like the log line, like the pitch, the setup to the movie comes across as quite simple, where we're really just centering around this detective character who starts to get this fascination, infatuation with a widow who happens to be a prime suspect in a murder slash death case. This is set in like the Busan area, and you think it's set up as this like crime thriller whodunit movie, but it doesn't really go down that road at all. It really actually becomes more about these characters with this like budding relationship and how that begins to become consummated as the detective played by Park Hae-il. He's like very uninterested in trying to solve the crime and find out if this suspect he has particular interest in is really at the hands of the crime, and there are other crimes that will follow later in the movie that really flip things on its head. And it just becomes this, I think, this quite layered narrative about a really unique like romance. And the reason I think it's challenging is that that narrative gets quite layered, and there have been a lot of like Hitchcock comparisons, specifically to Vertigo, And the way the movie builds up to this, I think, a really emotional climax it takes a while to get there, and I think you really have to just kind of ride with these characters and really like be in that like relationship, which is quite complicated and not easy to read or predict what's going to happen. And along the way, like as you probably imagine, the filmmaking flourishes are incredibly impressive. There's these really cool scenes early on where the detective is thinking or watching the widow, and he almost like places himself in the scene or like thinks back in the past of like something that he learned and puts himself in the scene. So you see them both in camera together, even though they're not actually interacting. Like he's like almost like Batman, like walking through a hologram of a crime scene. Like really cool visual touch. There's some really cool like in camera like pan out like zooms on like faces and stuff. uh yeah, like I said, complicated, challenging narrative, but like it's a really like kind of like gorgeous build that I think if you're able to like stick with the movie and like engage with these multi-layered plots and really process that dialogue, because it's a movie that really communicates everything through just tons of dialogue. If you're able to stick with that, I think it does have a rewarding end as a kind of like atypical like romance thriller type movie. So I would recommend it. It's getting limited release right now. It'll end up on Mubi eventually, which you can access via Amazon when it eventually gets there. So definitely check it out. It'll probably get Oscar nominated in Best International Feature Film. Yeah, definitely unlike anything I had seen in quite some time. Definitely a cool movie.
Sounds really inventive, and I think even that alone makes it worthy of checking out. So I can't wait to see it. Let's keep it moving though, and something that sounds a little bit more lighthearted. Ticket to Paradise. The George Clooney and Julia Roberts reunion. I know you were clamoring for it, Dave.
You know, shoot me, but I do love some star power, and it's
Yeah.
hard to beat Clooney and Roberts, two of the absolute megastars of recent times in Hollywood. And yeah, honestly, it was pretty great to just be hanging out with them in Bali.
Yeah, overall, I felt like this movie was enjoyable. It's not a movie that will be on my top 10 list, maybe probably not my top 20 list. But maybe top 30, given how this year we were just talking last week, we haven't seen as many movies. Um, yeah, it was just fun kind of being with them, and Clooney and Roberts have such a nice like uh rapport between them. Obviously we've seen them in quite a few movies, probably most notably would be the Ocean's movies where they play each other's paramours and that as
Oh
well.
yeah.
But yeah, I think overall I found myself being like, this was fine. It was just fun to be with them. I didn't really find it to be like a great rom com. I did like how the ending wasn't what you would usually expect for a rom com centered around two people. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like. What did you like about it?
Yeah. So I think actually it is a pretty successful rom com. Maybe that's per the lowered standard of recent times for the romantic comedy as a film genre. We're having a bit of a renaissance. Streaming has kind of helped that in a sense, but I think it's just kind of elevated by the presence of Clooney and Roberts, as well as Caitlin Dever, who's really great, of
Hmm,
course, as well, playing their daughter character.
yes,
And I think the movie is effective at communicating those emotional beats on the daughter side of things, while actually making you like earn the obvious anticipated reconciliation as in all rom-coms from the Clooney and Roberts characters themselves, where it's a movie that you're obviously going to see the parents because of who's playing them. But it doesn't actually really short shrift the daughter either. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing to really surprise you, I guess, but I think it's just kind of fun to be with, and I think Clooney and Roberts are quite good at the dialogue and have that good chemistry due to having many roles together before, not just the Ocean's movies. And yeah, like just in the beginning, having them just always trying to get the last word in on each other. I think they're both just really crushing it. Like this is the best Clooney's been in quite some time. I have to feel like he hasn't acted as much as we would like in recent times, but I mean, this just felt like the classic Clooney charm to me.
totally. And I mean, so much lower stakes than a lot of the other stuff he's done.
Right?
which I think allows him just to be silly and funny and charming. And I agree. I think he was great. Julia Roberts in a lot of sense, like, kind of has to play the straight man to him, which I think doesn't really allow her to like be herself fully in this. But I still think she's pretty great, and especially when she's talking with man, who is she's talking with, like, was it a friend or something about like uh him and Paul and all of it. I feel like there was like I can't remember exactly the scene, but when she was like kind of
Was it
breaking
her
down.
boyfriend, the pilot, flight attendant?
No, so Paul is the boyfriend. Maybe it was like someone who works at the resort that they were staying at or the hotel or
Mm,
something. But there's a scene I'm trying to remember exactly, but she was like talking to somebody about her like conflict with it, and
mm.
I thought she's pretty good with that. Um, and I really kind of going back to like the twist at the end, how they share a kiss and then they both just start laughing at each other and are like, no, this is not it. Like, I just really loved that because it was just not what I expected at all, and it felt like so true to the situation, that like
Yeah,
you could see a situation like this bringing these people together, but then being like, fuck that, like, no,
right.
we're not together
Re-
for a reason. I really appreciate that.
Really setting it up like nicely too, where you find out that Clooney owns the property by their shared lake memory, and he has never sold it. And like they really set you up, but then you're right, it doesn't go that way. And then
Yeah.
I love how at the end they both still jump off the boat though, and you get the
Mhm.
freeze frame, very throwback feeling as a way to end a movie with a frame like that.
Yep.
Um, I enjoyed Billy Lord's presence just as Caitlin Deaver's friend. She's just kind of doing Billy Lord things in terms of her comedic acting, where she's just kind of being like an airhead type, but
Hmm.
she's pretty good at it. How did
Definitely.
you like the beer pong scene where they're like doing beer pong with like some like local moonshine whiskey type thing? I thought that was like really funny, even if it was not actually a credible form of the drinking game beer pong.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was like, oh, this is really how it's played, but I still thought it was pretty fun. Yeah, I mean, there's some fun moments. I also like how they kind of bring in that like the cultural aspects of the people from Bali, and
Yeah.
like kind of I think that felt pretty true. I mean, I don't really know all those, so maybe it's not, but it felt like they were at least trying to be respectful of the area that they were paying homage to. So yeah, overall, I think the scene that probably stands out most, just in terms of comedy, is like the airplane scene where like Paul, the boyfriend, is flying and they have the woman between them who's like so
Yes.
ridiculous. I also love when they get off the plane after they hit all that turbulence, how she's the one like cussing Paul out. I thought that was pretty funny. It's definitely some fun scenes. Just kind of looking at like the critical reception to this, panned a little bit by critics, but it seems like people that go to see this really enjoyed it. It has an A- cinema score,
Hmm.
which is pretty good, and I think that probably speaks to the fact that you get these two, George Clooney and Julie Roberts, and there's like a real, I think, uh, niche of an audience of older women. Probably somewhere in like mid 30s to like 50s, who really don't have movies made for them much anymore. So I wonder if
Yeah.
we're gonna see a little bit more of this. It came in second to Black Adam this weekend, so not that there was really anything else going up
Hmm.
against Black Adam. So I wonder if maybe there's hope that we'll see some more of these made in the future.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the Ticket to Paradise box office, which is already quite robust overseas, where it released like over the past month already, you would see a lot of older audiences showing up in the first weekend to see this movie. So I would expect pretty strong legs for Ticket to Paradise, which is obviously no guarantee with this type of film at
Hmm.
the theater anymore. The Lost City was a pretty successful film earlier this year with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, kind of a similar thing, although that leaned a little bit more into the action side of things. This, though, yeah, I think it's just a really good example of like top tier star power can still work and be sold if you do it correctly. Um, one note I was kind of thinking of: wouldn't it be fun if like Caitlin Deaver's character, the daughter, was actually played by Emma Roberts, the
Yeah,
niece of Julia Roberts? I don't know if Emma Roberts can quite play 22 anymore. She's in her early 30s, but I just thought that would have been funny to finally have them like be related in a movie.
yeah, I agree. It would have been fun, but maybe someday. Maybe someday. A lot of time for both of them. But let's move on to the shift of power in the TC universe, because
Hierarchy.
the hierarchy has shifted, and man, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Black Adam. We finally got it, Dave. I know since they've been making superhero movies, you've been saying, "Give me a Black Adam movie. Just give it to me." Right?
Totally, and so has The Rock for that matter. He's like, we're making a Black Adam movie, and Shazam will not be in it. He's been saying this for years, and he's going to make this happen. And well, he did make it happen, and we got Black Adam, the latest entry in the DC extended universe. And yeah, I don't even have like a good joke to make. It's just quite a baffling disappointment, and
Yeah.
it's actually hilarious that The Rock hyped this up as something that took so long to make. A lot of people have been riffing that it would have been better if he said we just crap this out in an afternoon, because then it would be more believable.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of things I just really didn't enjoy about this, but I think it starts with The Rock, honestly, because while he is playing this man out of time, coming from ancient Egyptian time, bestowed with these powers of the gods,
Kahndaq.
which I guess as being someone that hasn't really read a lot of the like Shazam lore, like it's supposed to be Egyptian gods that give him this power, but
Yeah,
like
they
Zeus
switched
is
it.
there, right? Like
Yeah,
I
they
don't know.
switched it to seemingly more Middle Eastern, West Asian, in a fictional land called Kahndaq. Definitely reads as more of like a, Afghanistan type
Mhm.
geography when we're there. I believe that change had happened before in the comics, so it's not out of nowhere. But I think that actually kind of connects to one of the disappointing elements about Black Adam is early on they kind of nod to some cultural commentary with the film, where Kahndaq in the present day is more or less occupied by these foreign invaders, intergang. Kind of
Mhm.
a nod, a play to American and Western foreign policy in the Middle East. And you even have it expressed by some of the Kahndaq characters about how they're these, invader types, and Black Adam coming out of nowhere. Actually, that's our hero. Finally, someone defending us.
Mhm.
And one of the most poignant moments, I feel like, where they basically tell the Justice Society to fuck off because you never cared before.
Mhm.
It would have been great if the movie was a bit more intelligent in handling that, and continuing that train of thought with conduct throughout, but it's ultimately just dropped. And there's just a lot of baffling decisions that happen throughout the course of the film Black Adam. And yeah, it's ultimately just half baked all over the place. And I think you're right about criticizing The Rock, because it really kind of feels like how The Rock's filmography has gone the past couple years, where he can't take any L's as a character anymore. He's become what he hates. He's Vin Diesel. He will not like have his skin be scratched, but he also won't be a bad guy. Black Adam is a straight up villain in the comics, and from the jump, as soon as The Rock got attached to this years and years ago, he said that they were going to make him more of an anti-hero. Okay, fine, whatever. You're going to make a Black Adam solo movie, separate him from Shazam in the beginning. Cool, whatever. I can see it. But he's not a fucking anti-hero at any stretch of this movie, and it's so annoying that this film continues to tell us how he's so bad, because he's never bad. He's only ever killing bad guys. The first scene we see Teth Adam, Black Adam, he kills only the bad guys and makes a point decision to not kill the one woman in the room who he just knows is good. Like, he's never a bad guy in any stretch of the imagination. He only kills bad people. And it's just really incongruous from the way the DCU had previously communicated heroes killing people and Batman vs. Superman. We don't have to go down that road. Man, it's just annoying, some of these choices that were made in this movie.
I really loved the part at the end where they're like, he's the type of hero you need because he'll do what the real heroes can't. And it's like, well, I mean, what? Like, what are you even talking about with that? Like the fact that he'll like rip a guy in half, but like he ripped like the big bad villain in half. Like that was like who he ripped in half. Like it's not like he's like going around just like murking dudes. Like he's like he's making judgments based on if they're hurting people. I don't know. It was very strange. Kind of going back to what you're talking about, with, like them not really committing to the cultural commentary. I think even starting with like having this be a story where it's so tied to a cultural area, and then having American, like basically like GI Joe playing this guy is like very like
True.
strange, and just kind of like felt off putting to begin with.
The Rock is not
Um,
Asian.
no, not Asian at
No.
all. And
Yeah.
the only scenes where you flash back to what actually happened and how he got these powers, they have someone dubbing over and speaking. I'm not sure if it was Egyptian or some other um, dialect, but it's like, okay, so you needed someone who could do this, and you just got The Rock, and he gives a very one note performance. He is just not a good actor at this stage of his career. Unfortunately, I don't know if he ever was. I say it.
Well, I think he has been good at times. I think he can act, but he doesn't allow himself to do his strengths with this role. The Rock is a charmer.
Yeah,
And like the best moments of his performance in Black Adam, the film, are when like The Rock kind of like side eyes another character and like makes a smirk because you're like, there he is. There's the Dwayne I know. But like they don't want this character to be that. So it's just kind of The Rock like stone face the entire time,
yeah.
barely speaking. And maybe this movie was somehow something else and The Rock's in it less, but then that just wouldn't make sense as like being pitched and sold as a Black Adam movie. So there's just a lot of like ill-conceived components that are in the Black Adam film. Chief among them, of course, would be the Justice Society of America, which
Yeah.
was obviously hyped up via casting and trailers, and a big aspect of this film, these other super powered characters. We don't have Shazam in this movie, God forbid, but we have these other people. And isn't it hilarious too that Amanda Waller is the one who calls these in? Doesn't call the Suicide Squad in to take out this really bad guy we have to rein in. No, they call in the Justice League B team. Because
Yeah.
that's how it's presented in this movie, even if the Justice Society like predates them in comic history. Like it's
Mhm.
presented as the B Squad,
Yeah. The
Hawkman,
the the up and coming and like the almost retired, basically, and like
right? And they don't do any work to let you learn about the Hawkman Doctor Fate relationship, which is established to be this old thing. You even had Henry Winkler cast as the OG Atom Smasher, no Centineo, picking up the helm. But they don't tie you into any like history with any of these characters. And I actually think there's some decent moments somewhere in there with these performances of these characters, but like the movie just doesn't give you any time or space to feel anything with any of that.
yeah.
And before we know it, we're watching their ill-defined mission to rein in Black Adam for #reasons.
I know. I don't really know what he was doing. I did love the Amanda Waller Black Adam like conversation in the post credits. I just love that. I don't even know where he was supposed to be, Black Adam, and like how this like vision of like Amanda Waller came up, but it was
Good
just
point.
really funny.
Shout out
Um,
Viola D, man. She's getting paid by Warner Brothers. She don't give a shit.
Yeah, for real, I love it. I love the shamelessness. She's like, "Fuck it, I'll take the check. Whatever. I have to show up for 5 minutes and get fucking huge bank deposit." Anyways, I agree with you on the stuff with the Justice Squad, or what are they called?
Society.
Justice Society of America, JSA. Yeah, the Aldous Hodges character. What? Like, at least at least with what Doctor Fate,
Yep.
or you get a lot of time with Brosnan, especially in the end when like he's like deciding to like do the switch and bait with or the bait and switch, where it's like, oh no, I'm actually gonna be the one to sacrifice myself. There was no way Brosnan was coming back for this, so like it felt like
Yeah.
pretty clear this was gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like he did a lot with what he had. Aldous Hodge is tough because he's kind of put into the Joel Kinnaman role,
Rick
Colonel
Flag.
Flag,
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Rick Flag. Um, he's kind of put in that role where he's supposed to just be like the good leader who cares about the team and is doing the
Right.
right thing. but like you don't really know like where this comes from, or like you said, the relationship, and he's just kind of like a big brother to like Noah Centineo and Sarah Shahi, but like they just get like very little moments. And like you said, you don't really know why they're coming in. They just start like fucking shit up, like destroying the city. Um, didn't really make any sense to me. And then like, I think you can kind of tell that they aren't the bad guys. You can tell Black Adam isn't the bad guy, and so you get three-fourths of the movie through, and you're like, okay, well,
We need a bad guy.
yeah, where's the bad guy? And of course, we go back to where we started in the beginning. The one descendant of whatever his name is,
Sabak.
yeah, Sabak comes back, Ishmael Gregor, and it's like, okay, like this guy's just kind of coming out of the blue, and he's the bad guy now. I don't know.
Yep.
And
Well,
then
we
and
got
then
some
it's a CGI
zombies
fuck
rising up.
fest.
We got to have the people fight them for a
And it,
little bit.
and then it doesn't even
Brother.
look good. Like it's
No.
like back to being like crappy
So
CGI half the time from DC. And it's like,
Yep.
what
But like
was all this
that's what
time
makes it so
developed?
ill-conceived. It's like, fuck, this villain shouldn't have been in it at all. You should have just made Black Adam be badder, and then you want to make him into an anti-hero by the end of the movie. Sure, that probably would have worked way better. We didn't need Sabak at all.
Yep.
It's just because it's just such a familiar, weak third act villain that we know so well from past poor efforts like Black Adam. And yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Aldous Hodge because he's an actor I like quite a bit. I think he's
Yep.
really kind of come into his career recently with more and more high profile roles, and he probably will be back. As Hawkman is a member of the Justice League too, so we'll probably see him.
He gets promoted.
Yeah, I mean, like the Justice League cartoon, Hawkman was there a lot, so I'm sure he's in the modern iterations he's pretty common. Probably see him around. Like Noah Centineo and Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone and Atom Smasher. They really get to do absolutely nothing in this movie, but like the brief moments they do get, they have like decent chemistry. So they kind of like bat their eyelashes at each other. I thought it was pretty good. And Noah, yeah, is it a straight up ripoff of Tom Holland's Peter Parker? Totally. But like, I actually thought it was pretty good. Like he was actually like kind of charming as like the precocious new guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Justice Society too. Like it comes across as so ill-conceived from the very jump. All the reason we've said, and then Aldous Hodge, Hawkman, he states his mission statement that the JSA is there to like promote, what was it, international stability was the phrase he used.
Global stability.
Like, global stability. It's like, man, what a lackluster mission statement for you guys. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, go back to the drawing board on that one.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk about it, but like I did mention Sarah Shahi and the kid that's running around. I forgot what his name is. Aman,
Marwan?
played by Bodhi Sabongwe or Sabongi, and I just like again feel like that was just like we have to have a kid. We got to have kind of a love interest, kind of, or at least like a good like strong female character, and then a kid who is like supposed to be like why Black Adam doesn't like turn bad, or why he like I don't even know, like he sees his son in him or something like that. The kid will unite the city. That's his superpower. It just felt like so forced. I don't know. I didn't really find much of it effective, and I'm kind of a sucker for those sorts of like storylines, and like the power doesn't have to be given power. Like you can find it within. But like I don't think they really pulled that off at all. I feel like it was uh kind of just a blah, like big fart noise. Um, you get like a quick Henry Winkler cameo. Um, that's pretty much like the only other high profile cameo until the after credits, where we get Henry Cavill called in by Amanda Waller, because man, she's gonna call in some favors with some out of this world people to make sure Black Adam stays in line, because he was really out of line in this movie. And then we have a little Henry Cavill Rock face off, Superman versus Black Adam there at the end. What did you think about that?
Apparently, they shot it originally without Cavill, and then when they got the Cavill deal signed, Cavill shot this scene, obviously just his part, in England like a month ago. So got in under the wire, but I know anecdotally from some friends that despite the reception to Black Adam, hats off to The Rock, he got Cavill back, something that had been ambiguous and unsettled for honestly far too long when it comes to these high profile film franchises. It sounds like we will be getting a ostensible Man of Steel 2 in the near future, which is more than we could have said the past few years. I do like Cavill as Superman. I like Cavill in general. And I actually think Man of Steel is one of the stronger DC films of the last, era. So
Yep.
I welcome it. Do I want to see him square off with Black Adam? Not my
Hell
first
yeah.
choice necessarily, but I feel like The Rock probably got that one in writing too. He will be in the mix.
I'm sure of it. I am happy to see Cavill back. I am happy to see that we're going to be getting just more Superman in this world and not having to like rebuild the character in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
Uh there's just not a lot of DC heroes at this point that we have a lot of good faith with, where we know the character is definitely coming back. I mean, look at all the stuff with the Flash right now. And so I feel like DC kind of had to drop this bag, or they were kind of going back to the start with this. I mean, Aquaman, who knows when we're getting that movie? Is that next year, I guess?
We know it's
We
been
do.
filmed. That's
But
next year.
is it coming next year for sure?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let me pull this up.
So we know when we're getting Aquaman, but the Flash seems like it's in limbo. Then there's reports that they've already written a second one for Ezra Miller. So see what
Right.
happens to that.
Yeah, so actually 2023 is going to be the most prolific DCEU year yet as far as things stand. Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods was delayed out of competition with Avatar 2 this December. It's coming out in March. Then the Flash movie is currently dated for June 2023. With David Zaslav at the head, I feel like they're just going to release it just to make the money. It just sounds like how they're operating at Warner Discovery these days. Also, we currently have Blue Beetle dated for August 2023, which was converted to a theatrical film and kind of was able to be saved from the Batgirl fate. Of course, an HBO Max film canceled, written off, rather than released at all. And then closing it out, Aquaman comes out Christmas next year. So after that, separate from this DC universe, of course, we know there's a Matt Reeves Pattinson Batman sequel in the works. We know there's a Joker 2 coming out with Joaquin, Todd Phillips, and Lady Gaga. But after that, nothing seems concrete until perhaps whatever's next with Black Adam and whatever's next Man of Steel Superman. So we might be waiting. 2024 sounds like it's just Joker 2.
Yeah, I think kind of to circle back, I think the idea that the best DC properties right now are not tied to any sort of like connected universe is tough. But Aquaman, certainly people love Momoa in that role. I don't know what's going to happen with Miller. And then you think about like all the Batman stuff and where that's at in the connected universe. You're unsure. So,
yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because like, as we know, they've been trying to find their Kevin Feige figure in a certain sense, and whether they can get someone to be as truly all-seeing and all-knowing the way Feige has proven with Marvel, that's probably a little bit of a high bar. But just to have someone who's like directly running this, as we know, Walter Hamada is on his way out any day now. It felt like the Flash movie with the Flashpoint storyline was going to be that natural reset, and it would allow you to bring back a Michael Keaton and a Ben Affleck Batman for fun because we're going to reset. But like, they don't have like the leadership or like the setup in place to do this reset, it feels like, right? Because if Wonder Woman 3 still happens, sounds like it will, that doesn't seem like it's serving a reset. Man of Steel 2, same thing. Unless they really want to find a way to communicate a hard reset but still keep some of your actors. If you can pull that off, I say go for it, But in the meantime, I think it's just, film the film. There have been DC movies I've liked quite a bit, and there's ones I haven't liked, and there's ones I've liked somewhat. It's fine. It would just be really great if that more of a coherent plan was easy to see. but we've been saying that for a while now.
Anyways, Black Adam, not a movie I would recommend, but if you like DC, check it out, I guess. Let's move on to something I definitely would recommend, which is House of the Dragon, season 1, wrapping up on HBO last night to pretty big returns. 9.3 million tuning in for this. Pretty good turnout for it.
Yeah. Averaging about hair under 30 million per episode when you count, all the replays and throughout the course of a week. I believe that's pacing ahead of all but 2 Game of Thrones seasons average, episode run. So biggest show on TV right now. I really didn't have any doubt the House of the Dragon would be a smash for HBO, but I'm still happy that it was. And I think season 2 will be even bigger once that does eventually come out. Maybe not till 2024, unfortunately. But yeah, monster hit, in the face of strong competition. Rings of Power on Amazon, Andor on Disney Plus. Not to mention just the wealth of choice we have in the world in general. House of the Dragon really struck through and became a zeitgeisty Sunday night show as we expected as the first proper Game of Thrones follow-up.
Absolutely. And I think I don't think this was a perfect season of TV. I think there were some choices in terms of storytelling that maybe could have been thought out a little bit more. I think there's definitely some things I think could have gone a little bit better. But overall, I was incredibly pleased with what we got this season, and especially the last few episodes. I think from the 8th, 9th, and 10th episode were probably the strongest parts of the season, all happening within a much shorter period of time, which I think might speak to some of the larger structural issues with the beginning of the show. And we talked about the premiere where you have these two young girls, Millie Haycock and
Millie Alcock and Emily
Millie
Carey
Alcock.
is young
Thank you.
Rhaenyra, young Allison, and there's other young actors as well, like the guy who plays young Laenor, for example. But yeah, unlike Game of Thrones, you have recasting happening mid-season as large passages of time are communicated episode to episode as we truly advance through pieces of time in story. And I think that is a hard thing to communicate because I think the alternative is a bit unrealistic, which would be to spend more and more time over the course of, these earlier years. But they clearly don't want to make a 10 season show. So you kind of got to keep it moving as best you can. And, I thought Millie Alcock and Emily Carey were really great as young Rhaenyra and young Allison. And they do a really good job, I think, of setting that table and making that effectively prologue to that first season of House of the Dragon. They make it incredibly compelling and I think do a lot of the important work to set up the layered relationship that Allison and Rhaenyra have. But at the end of the day, you do kind of have to advance it. And I think thankfully, because the casting was so dynamite, like once Emma Darcy comes in, and of course Olivia Cook, who we know is great, once they come in and just pick up the pieces from the young ones, the show just keeps rolling, And yeah, it's been interesting to hear people of various levels in their Thrones fandom like dissect and analyze like how they feel about a show that's really briskly moving through some early plot. And you know I don't know how much better it could have been done without just spending lots and lots of more time taking your time. But if that wasn't an option, I guess what could they have truly done differently? What do you think? Because I do agree with some of that criticism where some of the characterization is a bit brisk or a bit thin with some of the ancillary characters. You kind of have to be following those core characters and picking up some other stuff through brief pieces of dialogue to follow through. Like, I understand it's a challenge for some, but I mean, do you have like a suggestion of how it could have been handled like a meaningful way in a different manner?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think especially because I haven't read the books, but I think where I was feeling like we would miss things is how from like one episode to the next, there would be these feelings. Like I think it's like episode 3 or 4 where it's like right after Alicent is named the queen, and the next time we see Rhaenyra, she's kind of being like put out to find a husband, and there's definitely
Mhm.
this like tension between them, but like still this like this longing and this sweetness for their friendship. And I wish we could have just gotten even like little like scenes of them like still like having these nice moments, or still like discussing their like care for other people. I think also a lot of the stuff that happens with Petty Constantine as King Viserys, it's major jumps of him like just getting sicker and sicker, although
Yeah.
somehow like still hanging on. Like that was like the most dead alive guy I've ever seen for like
Yep.
3 episodes. Just incredible, incredible stuff from their makeup department. But yeah, I don't know if there's a way to have done it better. Um, but definitely, I think because it jumped so much, it almost feels like there could have been a whole season, which, like you said, they didn't want to do, of them just doing the younger ones, and people would have loved it. People
Of
were
course.
even saying like the two young ones, Emily Carey and Millie Alcock, they wanted them to just remain the characters throughout. And it's like obviously you can't do that when these are about adults, but it's
Right.
pretty impressive that they gave that good of a performance. And then you jump forward, and Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook are completely beloved as well by the fan base. Like
Yeah.
they just nailed the casting in all this.
Really, and they both really feel like the character. Like that's the young one,
Yeah.
that's the adult one. Like they both versions of both characters were great. And yeah, and I think something that like I think people just might have to accept over time is that like we are going to slow down with the passage of time from this point out. They wanted House of the Dragon to be palace intrigue with even more Game
Mhm.
of Thrones spectacle because that is what this story in the lore supports. That's why it was such an intelligent and smart choice for a first adaptation, because there's so many familiar aspects to it, but they can bring in late period Game of Thrones budgets and immediately wow you with that. And as we dive into the Dance with Dragons, as Damon outlined in the season 1 finale, there are now 12 dragons on the board.
Mhm.
Shit's about to get hot. And maybe some people will be like, yeah, but I don't have any relationship with Aegon, the new king. Okay, fine. I guess then that's disappointing to hear. But for me, I found it all this like so credible and so amazing to follow. Maybe that's just because I'm just invested in the story. Like for me, like I wasn't like longing for a character to root for. It's like,
Yeah.
man, I'm rooting for the Game of Thrones, man. Like, I already know what these stakes are. That's why this is the prequel and the first choice as an adaptation, because we know what the stakes are. They are fighting for the throne. This is family on family. We know all this shit. We will get attached to people over time. I wasn't like, when some people were like saying how they like had no attachment to Rhaenyra, I was just like so shocked by that.
Mhm.
I thought, and that's what's cool about this show and this group of characters is a lot more gray found in here, right?
Yes.
There are a lot of, perhaps you can call back to people, right? Like Allison, I think, has been made a bit less villainous than she is on the page, but still can remind you of Cersei in terms of her love of her family and her, her children. And Damon certainly has a lot of uh, ups and downs to his character, right? Familiar, like he's like a Jamie Lannister type. Like we know what we're supposed to feel, I think, about some of these characters, and now just like seeing it get to it, like I don't know about you, but like once we got to our final timeline here and we see like adult Aemond fucking menacing with his one eye,
Oh yeah.
perfect. I get it. And I think they actually, with very economically, because there's only so much time as they move through plot, but like the way they set up Aemond as like the more driven, focused brother,
Mhm.
uh, and the way he handles losing his eye in the way he did as a youth, right? But being like, yeah, but I got Vagar now, so good trade. Like the way
Yeah.
he was able to say that as a teenager, like I think they've done a really good job of communicating some of that stuff. Are we as attached to Rhaenyra's other kids? With Harwin Strong, Jace, and Luke. Not as much. We haven't had as much time with them, or their betrothed. Damon's Valerian kids. No, right? We haven't spent as much time with them yet, but I think that like kind of central force that is the Greens versus the Targaryens, you know, to me that's been enough as like kind of our grounding, like sides of the two sides of the conflict to drive everything forward. And season 2, you would think would just slow down with that time, and there'd be less of that like forward pushing of plot, and then you'd really stick with the characters that we largely know. And obviously there'll be allies, there'll be lots of other houses coming into the fray, but we know all the major players, and this was, I think, a effective setup.
Yeah, I thought all those characters were fantastic. Eamon, so like you said, so menacing, and the guy playing him, I wanted to find his name, and I was having a hard time looking on my notes. I thought was just fantastic, and like you said, I think some of the best episodes are the ones where like I don't want to say the least happens, but it's like it's like more bottled up, right? Where it's like you're
Hmm.
focusing on like one event. So like when Eamon loses his eye, right? You have the now they see you for who you truly are moment between Rhaenyra and Alicent. And that
Amazing.
showdown is just incredible. Like it's just so intense, and you see not only how Viserys fails as a leader and as a king, but you
Hmm.
see like the dynamic between these two friends, these foes politically. It's like so intense and so well constructed. And yeah, that the way that Emma Darcy delivers that line is just
Right.
incredible.
Also, like the fact that that scene hit so well, and yet like Olivia Cook running with the dagger was in the trailer,
Yeah.
and didn't spoil anything. It still was an amazing moment that still landed.
Hmm. Incredible. And then obviously, like I said, you get the last few episodes, starting with episode 8, you get the kind of coming back together, the long walk, which might have been like that whole throne room scene is
Oh yeah.
incredible, but like the long walk is so moving. Damon, who's like this brutal character, but someone you also root for. I think Matt Smith plays him very well. Portrays a very complex and like
Yes.
wounded person. Is really impressive. But then you get an amazing moment from him where apparently this wasn't in the script, but when the crown falls off Viserys' head, Damon puts it on him, and that wasn't written. Matt
Mm.
Smith just did that, which is really cool. And then him cutting the head off the guy. It's just
Yeah.
like
The
what a
sea
moment.
snake's brother. Amazing.
Uh, Amazing
Can
stuff.
have your tongue.
Yep, then you get the showdown between the kids, but also like the Alicent and Rhaenyra coming back together, and then obviously shit goes down where you get
Ugh.
the vision shared to the wrong person.
Fucking Viserys really going out like the
He,
ineffectual leader he was at the
he
very
brought
last
them
moment. And that's to
together
get one
too,
more in.
and he just fucked it up. But then yeah, seeing the green side of things and then the red side of things in the last two episodes, I thought both those episodes were incredible. I really liked it during in the ninth episode where you see the High Towers making a play for the throne,
Mm-hmm.
and taking the throne. How like you're in the city and you're kind of learning a little bit more about like the inner workings. I wish we'd actually seen a little bit more of that, because there's like the scene where like the brothel woman is like, "Well, I'll tell you where he is if you work in this political agenda to stop like making kids fight each other." And I was like,
Yeah.
"This is
Mm-hmm.
really cool, actually." Like, I wish we kind
Totally.
of got a little bit more of this, but
Yeah.
there's not a lot of room for that in the Dance of Dragons, I
You would
suppose.
have wanted to go on more drunken escapades in Flea Bottom with Aegon. I don't want to be king. Uh, Targaryen.
I don't know about Aegon per se, but I would have liked to have seen like how these people of the city are getting there, like using the power that they have, the information that they have to like sway some political leanings. I think there's something there for
Right.
a show in the future.
I think there's definitely more room along those lines for like the Missaria side of things. You know, Sonia Mizuno had a tough accent a few episodes back.
Yeah.
Not her best for sure, but that's always, I think, been a strength of Game of Thrones, which was people not in power and how they interface with the world. And that's why
Mhm.
Westeros and Song of Ice and Fire has always been so rich, is because it feels so real, and there's so many different people, and the approximation of people from and to power is what is ultimately so compelling. And that is probably something that got the short shrift the most, as House of the Dragon season 1 had to advance through so much time and so much plot,
Mhm.
but you know it still like felt like, even if you view this season as the highlight reel, like there's some fucking amazing ass highlights, man. I don't know how you
Mhm.
can't be entertained. And
Yeah.
Patty Considine in general throughout the season is really great as Viserys, and has to do a lot as his character really transforms literally, and he has to change the way he's acting in the role, obviously. And I think the show does a good job of communicating what kind of leader he was and what kind of man he was, where he was not the despot like Mega the Cruel, and he ruled over a time of peace, but
Mhm.
he wasn't a good king for other reasons. And they show you, and they do that work to communicate that. And you see it
Yeah.
on both sides. You see it on the green side of things. You see it on the red side of things with Damon's view of things. Uh, yeah, man, there's just so much to like. I think really all the casting was tremendous. Even like we get the revelation about Laris and how Alicent was doing him a favor to get information. Like, I thought that is even set up in a really effective way. Obviously, it's a huge shock when you see the stuff with the feet, but like, and it's a big moment online. But like, I just think like they did a lot of work to kind of build up that Laris character and that Laris Alicent relationship, right? Conversely, like early on, you're like pretty invested with Sir Kristen Cole with young
Mhm.
Rhaenyra. And then they really show you what kind of thug he is and how he's
Yeah.
just
Just a
a goon.
goon.
He's a goon, and that's how he is on the page. And I mean, I think he's already rapidly risen up the rankings of most loathed Thrones character by many, and I think that's great. Fabian Frankel did a really good job.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job, and like seeing all of the like scenes where he's just like a complete piece of shit, but he's like so brooding. He's
Yeah.
similar to like the Mountain, I guess, or something like that, right? Where it's
Hmm.
just like this big goon, but
Also, quite
like,
misogynistic now towards
yeah,
Rhaenyra.
just terrible. Um, I think I agree. I think for the limited time they had and all the characters, they did a really good job of characterizing it, and you still get some awesome set pieces, man. I mean, like I thought the end of episode 9, where Rhaenys, who
Oh
is
yeah,
maybe like the most underrated character this season, and her presence I feel like is
crushes it at the end too when
so
she gets some
crucial.
more scenes.
Yeah, so the last 2 episodes, she's fantastic. Where Rhaenys on her dragon bursts up, could have just fucking flamed all the high towers right there, and just
One and done show, one
I
season.
know, I know. But then I actually felt like they made a pretty good like pitch as to why she didn't when she
Hmm.
talks to Rhaenyra. It's like it wasn't my war to start. Like
True.
this is really you. I was like, "Oh, okay, like fair enough.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, in the final episode, the way that she was talking with the sea snake and just kind of like being like, she's the only one that's not fucking going into battle immediately. Like, I think she's actually a good leader. I was like, yeah, making some good points here. I thought all that stuff was
Yep.
really effective. And also I really liked the conversation between her and her husband about like what is the point of doing all this? Like, what are they actually like fighting for? And how their goals weren't really aligned. I thought that was really interesting. And we haven't really talked about just some of the other cool moments, but you get the Damon scenes where he like goes and kills the
The
crab
crab feed.
crab feeder. You get him singing to the dragon. You get him just kind of coming into
Hmm.
the feast and just stealing the show and making everybody uncomfortable.
Crown
It's
of
all good
Thorns.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all
Totally.
really good stuff.
Let's not forget, we got Thrones at its most Thronesiest. Straight up incest. It's back, baby. And
People are
we
cool with
love
this
it.
one.
We are rooting for it. And it's so funny that they have 3 sets of kids. It's so great. You, of course, have Rhaenyra's kids with Laenor, quote unquote. And then you have Daemon's kids, Valerian kids. And then they actually have their kids together. Shout out that mixed family.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all really fun, and I think if you're really like not liking this show, you just got a big old dump in your pants. Like you really just don't want to like it. Is what I felt.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's just so much familiarity to it. It's like you liked it last time, right? Like,
Hmm.
I understand maybe it's not completely fulfilling on the writing side of things for you just yet. I'd say they've earned some goodwill That's
Yeah.
how I feel about it. And the name we were looking for was Ewan Mitchell is the one who
Yes.
plays adult Aemon Targaryen. And we should actually talk. How did you feel about the death of
Luke.
Luke at the hands of Vagar and Aemond? Uh, I don't know about you, but like when I saw that, like I think they did a really good job of showing how Luke was still quite young throughout the later half of this season, and they really, I think, set it up well that things could have gone wrong. And sure enough, I don't know about you, but as soon as I saw him like kind of like flying in as a storm's coming in to land at Storm's End, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. And then
Oh
of
yeah,
course
well,
you immediately realize Aemon's already there, and it's like, yeah, he's toast.
yeah. With the when you see Vagar like screaming after he like hops off of Arax, you're like, oh fuck, this is not good. It felt Jurassic Parky almost, with like the
Right,
rain coming down, like, and the way that they shot that like chase at the end, so thrilling.
right.
And you go ahead.
Also, I think really intelligently and wisely, because we don't really know this yet. The average Thrones viewer hasn't really had this communicated yet, but the dragons we just kind of guide them. Those
They're
of us who are
beasts.
lucky enough to ride them, they are still nuclear bombs. So they're not you're not without consequences by using dragons as a weapon of war. And you saw that firsthand where the way this show wants to communicate it anyway, whether I don't believe this is as clear on the page, but it seemed like the dragons both disobeyed their
Mm-hmm.
riders, and thus that's why the two little ones got.
They both screamed at their dragon
Yeah,
respectively, serve me. Yeah, and Aemon looked actually terrified. I don't know why I said his name like that. Aemon. Look,
Aemond.
yeah. Looked
Amen.
absolutely terrified after, Vagar fucks him up, so,
Oh my
or
god.
she fucks him up, I should
Yeah.
say.
What a chomp, man, too.
Yo.
Brutal.
I honestly, that was a gutting scene. I felt so sad for Luke. I knew when he was just kind of sitting up there, I was like, oh dude, you gotta keep moving. You gotta keep going. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely sets up a very exciting next season. That look on Emma Darcy's face. It's my background on YouTube. Check it out. But fucking brilliant.
Totally. Yeah, man. One thing I would love more of, I would love more Laenor. I actually really like Laenor and how they kind of set up the relationship, the arrangement that him and Rhaenyra have,
Mhm.
and I would love more time with him. They kept him alive on this
Mhm.
show, which is a departure from the page. So I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not, but I would have liked more time with Laenor just because I think that there was a lot more there. Even Harwin Strong, we barely got to know him before
Mhm.
Laeris kills him, but
Yeah.
I also liked him.
Yeah, I agree. Agree with all of it. This is a great show. We should wrap up there for this week. What do we got for next week, Dave?
Yeah, so I think most notably, just as one HBO banger ends, another begins, and that would of course be the White Lotus season 2. Very exciting. Uh, we also have a Smino album coming out, Banshees of Inisherin in theaters, All Quiet on the Western Front remake on Netflix, and then Star Wars has a new animated show out tomorrow, Tales of the Jedi, which is kind of like a Clone Wars prequel spin-off series, basically like bonus material, more fun for Clone Wars fans. So there's some good stuff coming up, and we know the movies are going to really start picking up week by week. So plenty of good stuff coming.
YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to Twitter @nostalgiapod. Follow the link tree. Follow the podcast anywhere you want to there. We'll catch you next week.